Shavua Tov, good morning. Having discussed Karpas, the next part of the Haggadah is Yahats. Yahats means to split. We take the middle matzah and we split it into two. Now, we have 3 matzot on Seder night. And people often quote the idea that the 3 matzot corresponds to the 3 types of Jews, Kohen, Levi, Israel. These are all wonderful ideas. But the main reason, the halachic reason why we have 3 matzot is simply because we need to have 2 matzot, like every Shabbat and every Chag. Every time we have a meal on Shabbat and Chag, we always have 2 matzot to remember the double portion of man which fell on Friday before Shabbat. And so we always have 2 chalot, and on Pesach we need to have 2 matzot. And we also need to break a matzah for a reason we're going to explain in a moment, and therefore that's why we have 3 matzot. So the reason of 3 matzot is not because of Kohen, Levi, Israel or any other reason. The primary reason for having 3 matzot is because we need to have 2 for lechem mishneh, for the double portion of bread and matzah which we have every Shabbat and Chag, and a 3rd matzah to be able to break. And since the 2 matzot have to be complete at the time we break bread, i.e. at motzi matzah, that's why we have to have a 3rd matzah, because we're going to break the matzah before. So that's why we have 3 matzot. Why do we break the matzah? The reason being is, the Gemara explains, because the Torah calls matzah lechem oni, bread of poverty. And it's the derech, it's the way of poor people that they can't eat their food in one go. They have to store their food, they have to ration it out. And so we do the same, we break it into 2. We have put one half now, and we keep half for later, for the afikomin later on. And so that's the idea of breaking the matzah. That's why the Hachamim wanted us to break the matzah, to symbolize the idea of lechem oni, of the bread of poverty, the idea being that we don't have one matzah in one go, and we have to actually split it up. And since we have to break the matzah, so we're not going to have a complete matzah, we need to have 2 complete matzot later on at motzi matzah, therefore we need to have 3 matzot. So why do we break the matzah now? Why don't we break it later on? Maybe after motzi matzah we'll just have 2 matzot and break it there, and like this we only need to have 3 matzot. The reason being is because also there's a play on the words, lechem oni. Bread, oni means poor, bread of poverty, and as we've explained, poor people keep their food for later on, they ration it out. But also, play on the words, oni, lechem she'onin alav devarim harbeh, bread which we talk over it. La'anot also means to respond to talk about. And so we break the matzah just before the Haggadah, just before Magid, before we're about to begin the mitzvah, the relating of the Exodus. There is where we break it, because lechem oni, apart from being the bread of poverty, it's also the bread which we say over it the Haggadah. And so, as we say over the Haggadah, we have it broken just before, and that's why Yahats comes just before the Magid. So that's why we have 3 matzot, that's why we break the matzah, and that's why we break the matzah specifically here, and nowhere else and nowhere else later on. We break it before the Magid, because it needs to be broken during the recital of the Exodus of Egypt. Now, the various customs here with regards what you do with the broken matzah. By the way, we break the matzah, we put the one part, the bigger part, we put away for the afikomin for later on, and the smaller part we put in between the matzot. So we've got the top matzah, the complete one, and the middle one, which is the smaller part of the broken one, and the bottom one, the complete one. And our custom, the Syrian custom, is to cut it into a daled and a vav. There are Kabbalistic reasons for these things, but it doesn't matter. The idea being is 2 pieces, one big and one for the afikomin, and one small in between the matzot. Now, it's also customary, the Mishnah Berurah quotes this, and it's custom of many, that we cover the afikomin, we put it into a kind of casing. The reason being for this is because the pasuk says, "Vayisaha amet betzekot terem ihmat," the people carried their dough. Mish'arotam tzerurot besimnotam al shichmam, they carried it on their shoulder, tzerurot, which means bound, it was covered up. And so this is where the idea comes from, that we put the afikomin in a kind of, we wrap it up somewhere. And that's why that's the custom of many people, many communities, that we actually wrap the afikomin up. Now, also the same pasuk says, "Vayisamet betzeko mish'arotam tzerurot besimlotam." They carried their bread on their al shichmam, on their shoulders. And this is why it's the minhag of the Syrians and many others, that what they do is they take before putting away the afikomin, they take it, it's wrapped up in a bag, wrapped up in something, and they put it on their shoulder, and each person goes round the table, holding it, having a chance to experience actually holding the afikomen and going out of it, because we're going to say later on, in every generation we have to feel as if we're leaving, and every person around asks, where are you coming from? And the answer is, I'm coming from Egypt. Where are you going? I'm going to Yerushalayim. And what are you carrying? I'm carrying matzah. And that's a beautiful, very old custom to actually experience it and to bring it up and actually to feel it. Tomorrow we'll talk about the whole idea of stealing the afikomin and where this comes from, and the different minhagim of hiding and stealing the afikomin. But today we've explained why we have Yahats specifically here, why we have 3 matzot, why we cut the matzah, and why specifically at this point, and the different customs with regards to covering it and also experiencing leaving Egypt. Shavua Tov.